with crafty internet. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. She is loud and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares. At every corner she lurks. She took hold of him and kissed him, and with a brazen face she said, I have fellowship offerings at home. Today I fulfilled my vows. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and have found you. I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deep of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. My husband is not at home. He has gone a long way journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till full moon. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose. Excuse me. Till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it'll cost him his life. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn off to her ways and stray into her path. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. April 7th, 2021, a set half full, the second reading from the very beginning. Introduction. For me, some of realities of testicular cancer For me, some of the realities for testicular cancer, beyond the pain and fear, were too funny to make up. I took notes throughout the process because the humor kept coming. From the names of doctors, the many humbling indignities, and some unique experiences, it seemed like a natural fit for the stand-up comedy routine. A friend, Mallory, suggested to my wife that I write a book. And now I have been blessed with many gifts, skills, and talent, but discerning the will of God is certainly not one of them, at least to date. Having the idea for a book arise from another person, a godly person at that, gave me pause. Maybe this was a plan to follow. After all, I am probably a better writer than a performer anyway. I asked my daughter Nikki and wife Dinelle to pray about it. By the time 1 week had passed, the book had followed out of me. The rough draft was complete and ready for review. I asked those reviewing it to consider 3 questions as they read. First, did you laugh? Second, were you uplifted, encouraged? Number 3, does it violate my Christian tenet? Is it edifying? This last question was relevant because despite my education and belief, there was one swear cuss word that best described part of this whole experience. It just fit too perfectly not to use it, but I was also aware that it might offend some. I am a Christian, and in my mind, this book should appeal to Christian and non-Christian alike. I write, however, well or poorly from the honest and pretty raw perspective. I didn't hold back in this book, but it is raw enough where I could see some people being taken aback at times as they read. The last thing I want in my authenticity is to even dance this line of being sacrilegious, no pun intended. If Grandma picked it up at a Christian bookstore, I could imagine some shock at the cuss word used and possibly the rawness as well. As she asked her husband, "Honey, what the blue balls?" So I don't know where this book will end up. I really belongs in both Christian and secular bookstore in the immature, raw, authentic section. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your point of view, no such section currently exists. I read most of Rance Armstrong's book about testicular cancer. It's not about the bike. My journey back to life. It was full of information and hope and was a great help. However, as chemotherapy progressed, there came a point where I couldn't read it anymore. Everything during chemo, even the fewer meals that I regularly ate, came to be associated with the season of my life. The sensory and emotional correlations between various things and chemo got somehow stuck in my very being and thus needed to be actually avoided. At least for a time, Lance's book is a great gift, and his foundation has done amazing things to help thousands of people deal with some hard realities. But at one point, I could no longer read about testicular cancer. I was living in it in all its horrible glory. Two paths of treatment was too thorny. I needed a spiritual deepening and comic relief desperately. This book, together with Lance, will hopefully give that to you or loved one if you need that. It is also meant to echo the openness that is found the women's approach to breast cancer. Some things are hard to talk about and very personal, but their openness is a good model for men to follow with colon, prostate, testicular, and other cancers. Confronting denial and actively addressing issues is arguably a tougher but ultimately much healthier path, both physically and emotionally. This is the truth with applications throughout our lives. Sometimes I think I am a pretty smart guy. I have even accomplished some things. Together, I can be a pretty prideful. However, God has richly blessed me with humbling experiences throughout my life. My head can never get too popped up before when reality hits, and I know again my smallness in things. This book chronicles a rather rich set of humbling indignities I enjoyed during my treatment process for testicular cancer. I hope they make you laugh, deepen your relationship with God, and encourage you and yours. Regarding the rawness of the book, at times my intended audience is adult, all males, and approximately half of female population. Of the latter, I am thinking of those who can handle and possibly even enjoy some raw male humor and honesty. This book is not for everyone. Before we let a few close friends review it, we gave a copy to each of our kids, all young adults. If they felt it was too raw or personal, they had battled on the whole project. Unfortunately, because it hits so close to home for them, reading it very slow and painful at times. The process was relieving, and the whole ordeal, and although it certainly was a joyful outcome, too much of an emotional roller coaster for them. We decided to proceed without their review. They have the manuscript for posterity. As a side note, since the chapter on sex is especially open and raw, feel free to skip it if you wish. However, for veteran couples married for 20 plus years, I've received very positive feedback. A particular couple married for over 25 years said it was true to that season of life, hysterical and hilarious. Proceed at your own risk enjoyment. I've struggled often with the title of this book. I've been told by knowledgeable people and intuitively felt myself that it isn't right to have a title that many people would have to overcome to explore further. It might be a speed bump for some and a roadblock for others. However, the title fit with the experience and was framed well. Experientially, what is it? Experientially, by my son Chris comments. After all, I'm not writing this book necessarily for everyone. If you are offended by the title, you'd likely be offended by the book and shouldn't read it. If targeted for men and hardly female types who can appreciate male humor, the title and the book as a whole as also is cynic. I think with the way in which breast cancer has been gradually desexualized and normalized largely by women in our culture, breast cancer was once, like perhaps testicular cancer still is, an uncomparable, somewhat taboo subject for polite and routine conversation. This is no longer the case. Well done, ladies. Public exposure, even advocacy, note NFL adopting pink shoes, etc., to highlight public awareness, have brought the subject into the light. Screening, support, and recovery are now much more evident and advanced for the breast cancer. Indeed, the normalization has expanded into the adolescent genre, my favorite, with the t-shirts and the slogans like "We love boobies" and "Save the tatas." Humor and real life philanthropic endeavors can be combined and done for common good. I can imagine slogans for testicular cancers might also one day be humorously normalized. For example, known as sac cancer, go as sac cancer, etc. In any event, the title is too congruent with the mix of humor, adolescent and the reality that book aims for. I hope you enjoy. I hope you can enjoy and or overcome the title to explore the book and yourself further. As one appreciative reader, Teresa P. said, "You had me the title. You had me at the title." Per the movie Jerry Maguire. Side note by my Christian readers, America has long been considered a death-denying culture. We chase the temporary symbol of youth, sometimes desperately. More is not necessarily a better things or life on earth. Christian can be susceptible to this as well. A belief in even eventual eternal life in heaven is a promise we hold on to as we should. But God's timing is not our timing. We too can be prone to deny the reality of our own death because we aspire to be more deeply spiritual and faithful to these promises. The rapture, the second coming of Christ, will happen in our lifetime. I believe deeply it will happen, and in eternity is a promise of believers. But the life and death cycle is also God-given. It is His order, as stated in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 2 NIV. For death is the destiny of every man. It is behooves us to deal with that order first, knowing that the second coming will happen, but not necessarily in our earthly lifetime. The financial crisis that has hit the world recently can be likened to a cancer, a major illness. It requires a fight, reordering of life priorities, and classifications of those things most valuable to us. Wealth often gives the illusion of security, control, independence, and freedom, all things that can be significant stumbling blocks to submission. Brokenness owned and bling blocks to submission. Brokenness owned and a deep spiritual walk. These artifacts, these artifacts of wealth and are illusions that we all cling to, Christian and non-Christian alike. They can distort a deeper, higher truth, as the existentialists say. As the existentialists say, we are thrown into life needing to choose meaning and deal with separation, isolation. We are free to do anything and are responsible for all choices, and we will die. The ultimate measure, calamity, but a framework for living authentically. Indeed, from a Christian perspective, death has been swallowed up in victory. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 55 NIV. And whether it is the reality of personal morality, a major life-threatening illness, a financial crisis, or a chosen attempt to deal with the God-given order of life and death cycle, the opportunity to live more deeply, authentically, and congruence with our chosen values is enriched by a robust response to these realities. You individually and America as a country will be enriched in process, and may God bless your journey in this life and the hereafter. Romans chapter 5 verse from verse 3 to 5 NIV says, and we also rejoice in our suffering because we know the suffering produces perseverance character, and character hope, and hope does not disappoint us. The idea of rejoicing in our suffering is one of the hardest things to wrap our minds around in this life. When we find ourselves in situations that are deemed suffering, we struggle to survive them. Finding joy in their midst seems unfathomable. Unfathomable. This joy doesn't have the connotation. When we find ourselves in situations that are deemed suffering, struggle to survive them. Finding joy in their midst seems unfathomable. The joy doesn't have the connotation familiar to society, where it is simply a synonym for happiness. It seeks of something different, something out of this world, per se. It is an attitude that can be adopted in the midst of anything, that still hopes for something better, believes that is too shall pass, and seeks to find the silver lining. What this scripture talks about, it is a goal much easier said than done, but experientially possible and truly life-changing when accomplished. This book might attempt at rejoicing in my season of suffering, and to empower and inspire you to do the same amidst your suffering. Joy is simply hope in the darkness of times, and hope cannot be taken away, and it cannot disappoint. This book is dedicated to my wife Janelle, and who had to endure the sidecar status of with the whole process. As a friend Laura W. so aptly put it, watching someone die in slow motion is terrible. Dinner was my deepest blessing throughout the ordeal. It is also dedicated to all the cancer fighters, no matter what the outcome. And their families and friends whose love and support throughout the ordeal make up and the manna we survived on during the trip through the desert of cancer recovery. I especially single out a friend and multiple cancer survivor, Dottie J, and her family in this regard. She is the epitome of courage and class, having survived with dignity and grace more episode of cancer and treatment than can be counted on one hand. She is, as I like to say, the baby Ruth of cancer survivor, and a model for us all. Workbook instructions. Workbook instructions. This book is written for individuals and groups in a workbook format to help confront in a realistic and positive way to weigh the realities of personal mortality. It is not about my journey so much as it is about yours. Leaving a legacy to those you love requires some preparation. Everybody is going to die, even you. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 2 NIV. For death is the destiny of every man. The living should take this to heart. The question is, are you going to live well? And if so, What does living well means to you personally? A life, a life, a life well lived is a life well planned. Turmoil, the turmoil in practical and emotional terms, the that ensues from an unplanned death has tremendous consequences to those left behind. I differentiate here between a sudden death and unplanned death. You can know you are dying for months and years and still not prepare. That is an unplanned death. It is an irresponsible death and can do much to undermine the legacy you hope to leave. Long-term simmering emotional conflicts in any family come out in full force over the lack of clarity in your intentions. I have seen it in innumerable times in my clinical work as a psychologist in private practice. It is devastating and unnecessary wound to any family structure. Even more importantly, perhaps are the gifts not given, those final words and acts that sum up a life of meaning and purpose in our most cherished relationship. The questions at the end of that chapter can help focus your efforts to bring clarity to these gifts and to how you live. Your family and loved ones, I'm sure, I will greatly appreciate your efforts. It may very well change your life by providing clarity to priorities in accord with your deepest desires. This book is thus that not for those who want to die, but for those who want to live more fully. If depression is a part of your life experience prior to or during this process, your participation in the workbook should be screened for readiness and monitored and supported by professional psychotherapy throughout. It is intended to be joyful and meaningful, but not a life light what is that? What life treated, light treated. I wish you joy, meaning, purpose, and enrich life in the process. Self-test. Answer the following questions both before and after going through the workbook. This is meant as a self-measure for clarity and can be shared in the group setting or with others if you wish. There are standards for rightness here. This is standardized assessment tool for self-examination. Hopefully, there will be progress from the first to last administration of the scale. It is up to you to decide how much progress you want. Please circle your response to each question and total the scores at the end. Never, not at all. Number one, never, not at all. Number two, very rarely. Number three, rarely. Number four, sometimes or partially. Number five, often. Number six, usually. Number seven, always, completely done. Number one, I have thought recently and deeply about the legacy I want to leave. Number two, I live in accord with my priorities in life. Number three, I have reviewed my life and am at peace with my joys and regrets. Number four, I have a living will or trust. Number 5, I have clearly communicated my intentions about cremation, burial, and memorial service to my loved ones. I have sufficient life and disability insurance to cover all my financial responsibilities and wishes. 7, I have communicated my deepest feeling to all my loved ones. Number 8, I am at peace with others. Number 9, I have a DNR, do not resuscitate, power of attorney, and organ donor forms completed and signed. I am at peace with God. A word of caution. Some valuable feedback I got from two friends, Janet and Miss Millie, who reviewed on a yearly draft of this book, was that the humility and humor of narrative were engaging and inviting, but that then there was a harsh reality of legacy questions. The flow was from one levity and then to maybe too much depth reality. It was like bam, and very possible overwhelming for the reader. The transition was too drastic. There is much merit in this feedback. Consequently, I've written a brief introduction to each post chapter, a set of legacy questions as an attempt to provide a gentler transition. The legacy workbook is also placed at the end of the manuscript. However, at least two other options might be considered. You can read the whole narrative and then reread it with the legacy questions, or simply return to the legacy questions at a later date, your choice. The only potential problem with the last option is that later date may never happen, and denial and avoidance will again rule. In any event, please choose the approach that the best fits you and your needs. Authenticity and liberty can coexist, as they so often do in real living. The transitional process in this case is yours for the choosing. This is the last page of reading aloud for April 7th.